Welcome back, folks. Today I have exclusive new info about a new Sony sensor, something that could find its way on a future FX3 II and even a Sony A7S IV if Sony decides to continue this lineup, which is not given. But I have those specs. They are from a reliable source. I'm pretty sure that this is going to be correct, and it's quite an exciting sensor. From a few key specs could really bring a leap forward in the Sony system. Before we talk about this new sensor, the usual reminder to first of all like this video to help the YouTube algorithm, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification button to not miss any of the upcoming rumors. In 2025 we learned that partially stacked sensors are the new king on the market. Sony rolled out first this sensor for the Nikon Z6 III and the Lumix S1 II. It was already clear that the sensor has some clear advantages, and then by end of the year we got the Sony A7 V with a 33 megapixel partially stacked sensor. Everybody was really happy about the performance of this new sensor. A couple of weeks ago I told you that after this two full-frame sensor we are getting a new medium format sensor that is partially stacked with 180 megapixel made for the Fuji GF Hasselblad X3 XD cameras. It's likely to be announced by late 2026. And now I have info about a fourth full-frame sensor, a new 60 megapixel partially stacked sensor that is going to be announced pretty soon. And I think the first camera having this sensor will be announced probably second half of 2026. I don't know if it's coming even earlier, but sources only gave me the specs of this sensor. They didn't tell me if the sensor will find its way on the FX3 II and A7S IV, so keep it in mind that this part is speculation, but the sensor specs are pretty solid. So let's kick off the 60 megapixel resolution. So if the Sony FX3 II would use, for example, this sensor, this would mean the increase would be of 4 megapixel, because as of now, the FX3 and the Sony A7S III do use an older 12 megapixel sensor. Why would this 4 megapixel jump matter? First of all, of course, you could finally have proper Sony active stabilization mode on those cameras, because as you know, you crop in by 1.1x using this mode, and if you have obviously a 60 megapixel resolution, you can crop in and still have native 4K, so that's a clear advantage when you use it on a Sony camera. Having 60 megapixel means you have close to 5K resolution in video, which means you can output on a recorder 4.8 or something, close to 5K resolution. You can also downscale from 5K to 4K to have better sharpness and better moire control and so forth. Obviously, this would mean on the FX3 II, for example, they would still not give you 8K. So that's a bit of a downside maybe, but 8K is really a niche. Of course, it just is useful because, for example, you can crop in, so it gives you that kind of flexibility, and still you have more resolution, so it's always nice. But looks like that if Sony is going to use this sensor, they prefer to have stunning 4K than having not so used 8K, okay? The second spec of the sensor is that actually the readout speed from the sensor is quite fast, 240 frames per second, which is super fast, but this is a theoretical upper limit, because I've been told that the readout speed for the autofocus performance is still 120 frames per second, like we have on a Sony A7 V. We still have to see what this means in terms of quality video and also frame rate. I don't have the info about the frame rate, but obviously it probably has a high frame rate, and also for video having that fast readout will probably give you less rolling shutter issues and so forth, but I don't have much more info about that, only that on a theoretical level it does 240 frames per second, with the only technical spec that I got, additional spec, that it has 120 frames per second readout speed in autofocus. Now, the one really cool new feature this sensor has is quite a small game changer, because it really matters a lot, particularly if you are a film shooter, because as you know, the current partially stacked sensor, like you see in the Sony A7 V, has a DGO tech, which combines two different exposures and merges them, and this tech only works with mechanical shutter and only brings benefits at low end up to mid ISO, 800 ISO and so forth, so you have that extra dynamic range performance, but it only works in stills and with mechanical shutter. The new sensor would use the new DCG HDR tech we see on the Lithia Sony mobile sensors, and this is a completely different tech. It uses two different gain settings at the same time, combines them, and this tech works with electronic shutter, so you are not relying on mechanical shutter only, and it works in both video and still, so you would have that extra dynamic range performance in video, which is something that really matters for a camera like the FX3 II or the Sony A7S IV. And also you can use it with the electronic shutter, which is likely to be the only shutter available on the FX3 II and A7S IV. Just my guess that both cameras, or if they are really coming, the FX3 II, I'm sure it's coming. The A7S IV, I'm still not sure if they will ever make it, but it's likely that the FX3 II and eventually also the Sony A7S IV would have electronic shutter only. So this new tech would allow you to still have that amazing dynamic range in video and stills, and I think this would be really big news and something that Sony should really market well to sell these cameras. And now to the last info, the camera will have two PDIF system, so not a classic PDIF system where you have separate pixels for the autofocus system. Every pixel has also on the side a pixel for the autofocus readout, and to improve the performance, autofocus working across the entire frame and on every pixel, giving you complete accuracy. This is all I got about this new sensor. While I'm pretty certain this sensor will be announced in 2026, and from what I heard, it's not exclusive to Sony, so also other manufacturers can probably use it. So maybe Nikon, Panasonic down the road, for example, a Panasonic S1H2 could use this sensor. I don't know yet if also Sony will use that sensor on the FX3 II or the Sony A7S IV, or have a different version of this sensor that might be for internal Sony use only. That's still uncertain. But all I can say is that in my opinion, this would be a perfect fit for a FX3 II. Let me know in the comment system if you think that this indeed would be a perfect sensor. There's still a small chance the FX3 II uses the global shutter sensor we see on the Sony A9 III, which brings other benefits and is also a terrific sensor, because having a global shutter gives you a couple of advantages like no distortions and instant readout of every pixel. So I'm still not sure if which sensor will find its way in the FX3 II, but seeing the specs of the 60 megapixel sensor, I think this is the more likely candidate. And that's great. That's really great that Sony is pushing forward this partially stacked sensor, that we now have DCG, which is going to also bring benefits for video users and also for people that rely on electronic shutter. And so I can't wait to see the first product using this sensor. But as of now, I don't know if it's going to be the Sony FX3 II or maybe a Nikon or a Panasonic camera. Still not sure. All I know for sure is that FX3 II is likely to be announced in 2026. I got no info about the Sony A7S IV, but trusted sources told me the FX3 II is really coming. And I think with the competition like the Canon C50, Nikons that are, Sony really has to bring out a camera that is really a stunner. And this sensor would, I think, justify the release of the new FX3 II and make it really a hot seller. Okay, folks, I hope that in the next weeks I can get some more info about what camera will use this sensor, and if the FX3 II is really coming soon, maybe at the NIB show in April. That will be a perfect fit for a launch of the FX3 II. Anyway, if you have some more info, you can contact me using this email address and contact form. If you have find any info on the web, or you hear something you can about any manufacturer, not only about Sony, you can contact me using those addresses. And I think I see you soon, because I'm already working on the info about another partially stacked sensor that could be coming later this year. So this would be the fifth sensor, and it's going to be quite an interesting sensor also. In this case, really a lovely sensor. So again, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification button if you don't want to miss any of the upcoming rumors and videos, because it's going to be really exciting on this channel. See you very soon.